Good morning, this is April Wells with So Darn Cute Quilting. Here we are this week, we're getting started again. I have the first row of lilies done except for the very end right there. So this was the first block that we saw last week. This is the second block that I'm finishing out, and that is part of the last block. So when I got to the second block, my measurements were kind of off, and that's because there's not a square in a quilt that is actually square. So it's very difficult to do straight lines and keep them consistent. Another thing that I was having a problem with was keeping up with the order of how the lines went. So what I did was I made this little cheat sheet, and I also made a note to keep my lines skinny so that it helps me as I'm going through, and I just put it down like this, and it helps me to see the order of the lines. Also, this helped me to see the order in which the lines go, which is, if you look at it, it starts with a 2 here, and it goes 1, 3, but it also goes backwards 1, 2, 3. So it kind of helps if you're able to count off the lines, and you can do that backwards. You could go 3, 2, 1, you know, over and over again. You can start with 2 and go 2, 1, 3. I don't have to use it so much as I did with readjusting the stitch lines on this block, as I did with the next block, because once you do it a couple of times, you kind of have it down. Another tip that I have for you is, let's say you have a piece that you've got to come back to and you've got to quilt over it again. So what I like to do is I like to put a pin in it. Right there you can see a little pin. And what that means to me is that I need to stitch around this little circle right here again. Whenever I did have the problem with the squares and the lines not quite meeting up in the center, I did do the swirls in the center, and I've had to go back in and take those swirls out. So I've spent quite a bit of time unpicking, which has not been any fun at all. But it has been a learning lesson, and I've learned that I need to mark the lines out first and understand that the squares are definitely not going to be perfect. So the next thing I'll do with this right here is I'll spritz it with some water to get rid of those old lines, and they'll just like disappear. As you can see down here, they've faded out. So what I was going to show you is how I do these little tiny straight lines all together at the same time. So I have some in here already, and I'm just going to jump over that little piece right there, and I'm going to go back and forth, straight across, back and forth, back and forth. And then when I get to the top of the line right there, I'm going to want to skip over that and try to keep the least amount of stitches as possible on that line. So here's kind of how it goes, is I put the ruler up against the foot like this, and I use the ruler to guide me as I go back and forth, which helps keep the lines more consistent and straighter. I don't always go all the way to the side. I kind of leave like a little bit of a loop there, like that. So it's not always right bumped up to the edge. But that's the progress that I've been making. I hope to get one more row of the lilies done before I go ahead and conquer this little square area here with the flying geese that come out. I'll keep you guys posted and think of any more hints or tips that I can tell you along the way. Talk to you later.